This is Sheryl Aronson, licensed marriage family therapist, and you are listening and watching On the Road to Your Heart. This is our first podcast, and I am with Dr. Michael Berlin, who is my co-anchor for the show.
And pretty excited to be here.
Thank you, Michael. Well, just a little bit about me. I have over 30 years of being a therapist and working with couples. I have run workshops. I've been on the Montel Williams show as a couples expert and the Laura Berman show. I've written articles as well. And I would say like half my practice is couples. And I very much enjoy helping them learn the skills they need to have a healthy, dynamic relationship.
I actually grew up in New York, went to school there, got my doctorate there in psychology, and I've worked with groups for a very long time. And then I moved to the prison system, I moved to hospice, I was an elementary school teacher, so I had a lot of different hats before I became a writer.
So that's another thing Michael and I share in common. I'm an entertainment journalist and photographer, and I cover the arts in my articles.
And I am a screenwriter. I've written television and movies and animation and a musical, and that's what I do.
So we're bringing you a variety of our wide experience to talk about relationships. One other little note, Michael and I play softball at the Beverly Hills Sunday morning softball. We've known each other since 1979.
40 some odd years.
So
God, I was 12 and you were 10.
So we are very good friends and we're very excited to be here today. How do we learn about relationships? Where do we get our ideas from?
I'm an old school kind of guy, and to me it's about imprinting. It's about how we grew up, our parents. Some of us were lucky enough to have two at the time.
Right.
Our family, friends, adults. You know, children come into the world, babies come into the world, and they're taking everything in. You know, it imprints in your head how people are, how things get done, how people act, and you take it and you hold it, and then as you get older, you sort of translate it into a self, how we then bring that back out.
And I also think that each family is their own separate culture. So what we observe as we're growing up, whether we have a family that celebrates occasions or people talk loudly and argue, or people are very quiet and do not speak their feelings. We go on vacations. We don't go on vacations. It's everything you're seeing in your family as a child is, like Michael said, imprinting. I call it on your emotional body. And we are learning right then and there what love means, except it stays in our unconscious until we finally meet someone and get into a relationship and we find out love might mean something very different to me than to you when we have our first argument.
It's funny that you say that because I was thinking about, what does love mean? There are people who growing up are starved emotionally, and they get a breadcrumb, and to them that's love.
Right.
So, it's all within context. And then there are some who are sort of showered with love,
Yes.
with affection, with family, with group. And again, I think it makes a difference. That's as we grow up, that's what we bring to us.
We bring to us and we don't realize that. So we're learning about love from the moment we're born. And there's this attachment theory that they talk about in psychology, how the child attaches to the mother. And shows love. And like Michael was saying, sometimes it's very close and loving and secure. Other times it can feel like you're just abandoned. And that's going to carry over. So what we like to talk about is, what is your book of love? We all interpret love in a certain way. So a very interesting thing to do that I do with my couples when they first come to see me is I say, write down what you think love means to you. That's number one. And then write down how you show love, because those could be two very different things. Once your partner is not showing you what your book of love is, you might not feel loved by them, therefore, conflict.
Could we say, is it fair to say it's the language of love?
We can talk about that. Yes, it's the same.
You know,
Yes.
I am, and I think you're right. It's really important in terms of couples and relationships to know what it is we want.
Exactly.
What are we giving? And I think many people don't really know what they're putting out in the world. You know, they're surprised when they hear it, when you hold that mirror up. And in the same way, what do they want to take in? What do they want to get from the partner? If they don't know, then how is your partner to know what to give you?
That's exactly true. All we know is that we end up yelling and going blah, and I need that, you're not doing that, that's happening, and then we don't feel loved by our partner. So it would help everybody out there. Just take the time to write down, what is my language of love, or what does love mean to me? How do I want to be loved by my partner? And then also write down how I show love, so your partner knows this is how you're showing love, even though it might not mean that's how I want you to show me love. At least I can give you credit for doing what you're doing.
You know, I think of the miscommunication of, wait, I bought you a car. Wait, I bought you some fancy clothes. Wait, I bought you this fabulous house. And you'll say, I just want you to sit next to me and hold my hand. You're thinking, what? Doesn't the other stuff count? It does, but differently.
I have to tell you again, I have to remind couples, I like doing this. I say, think about the percentage out of 100%. What percentage do you feel loved by your partner? Because if you're getting 60%, 70% of your needs met, that is a good percentage. But guess what? We concentrate on the 10% that's not happening, and then it seems like nothing's happening. I'm not feeling loved by you at all, and it clouds our perception.
You know, I would bet you see the continuum. It's like on one hand, as you say, you're getting all of this and you find the evidence for the small piece.
The evidence.
Or the flip side of people who come in starved. I'll bet you see a lot of those.
Yes, because again, it really goes back to our childhood of origin and where our wounds first start. And we'll talk about that more because that's worth a whole discussion, actually. But we want to just start off with, where do we learn about love? Now, unfortunately today also, because we're so based on social media and likes and are we popular, and all our information's coming to us fast and furious, unlike it's ever been before. I think it's also distorted how we see love.
Social media.
Yes.
Whoever created it, parallel to this, I saw a billboard once and it said, if you get your news from the newspaper, it's a day old. And I thought, that's how we grew up, from the newspaper. And yes, you got the morning edition, it was yesterday's. We live in a world where there's no censoring anymore. You know, people say things, they hit that send button, they post things that are outlandish, or in a moment, you know, you're feeling a certain way. In the, quote, good old days or bad old days or whatever it is, you know, we felt a lot of things. We kept them to ourselves. We sort of worked it through, thought to ourselves, thank goodness I didn't see that person an hour ago. And now that I think about it, it's totally inappropriate. Mm-hmm. We live in a world of instantaneous gratification.
Yes.
Boom, it's out in the world.
It's very, very dangerous to our relationship. If you watch television or whatever, you can get a romanticized vision of what love means. And I always, again, find it, because I've been doing this for so long, that when we come into marriage, we all have that romantic, and this is my partner's going to be perfect because I married he or she, and there we have it. We find out reality sets in and perfection goes down the drain, and we have to deal now with the person in front of us. And there, I always say, I've never met a perfect person. Have you, Michael?
No, no. The other trap I think we fall into is we're looking for our, quote, soulmate.
Yes.
As if there's one special person out in the world, and either you find them and you're lucky, usually disappointed, or you don't, and you have to, quote, settle. And that's not fair to the partner either.
Exactly. So, what we do need is to learn skills. And we also need to be a little educated about what goes into relationships. And that's what we're going to do on our podcast, On the Road to Your Heart. We're going to have great discussions about so many different topics. We're going to start off. I like it here. Now, another thing I'm doing, and Michael and I will be doing, is we are writing a musical called On the Road to Your Heart. I wonder what it's about. So, and we're writing songs.
What a
about
coincidence.
what a coincidence. And we're writing songs about relationships. So I'm going to share, and we're going to share some of the songs, some of the lyrics to the songs, because they really do take in all the ideas of what it takes to go into a good relationship. So there's this song called 10 Keys to Successful Relationships. I wrote this song with the idea, again, working with couples for 30 years, these 10 keys really are what you need to have a successful relationship. We can list them and we're going to talk about them, but they're very hard to do.
Yes, it's easier to list than it is to live.
Yes, exactly. Let's first find out what the first one is. Self-love. Now, I like starting off with that because this has to do with me. This has to do with you. Why do you think self-love is very important?
I'm going to quote the Beatles here. Mm-hmm. The last thing the Beatles ever wrote was, "The love you take is equal to the love you make." And I think, to me, that says an awful lot, which is, how do we feel about self? Mm. And that's reflected on what we put out in the world. Yes. And if you don't really feel that love, that internal, strength and kindness and many other things that go with it, you cannot give it out in the world. And it's reflected. I think people walk around and they don't really understand what their impact is on other people. Mm-hmm. And I think those who are self-loving are able to really share it. You don't have to be stingy with it. It's sort of a well of that. And if it's not present, you can't be in a successful relationship. That, to me, is the beginning of the climb for good relationships.
It really is. And unfortunately, again, in our society, I really don't find a lot of people understand this. I have a relationship with myself. This relationship is the most important relationship, or equal to, because if I don't know who I am, what I want, where my wounds are, how I experience life, how do I come across, if I feel guilt or shame or self-hate, which many people do, then it's going to all come out on you, my partner. And I'm expecting you to be the all-loving, all-accepting good parent that will allow me just to act badly sometimes.
I tell you a trap of that also, which is the difference between self-love and being selfish. I say that because I find many people who understand how to, quote, take care of self. They're self-loving and they protect that piece of themselves.
That's right.
And others will say to them, don't be selfish. And that's the trap, I think, because that's not being selfish. Taking care of oneself is not being selfish. It's a healthy response to the world.
It's very healthy, though I like what you're talking about because I think people can also use this concept of self-love for being selfish also, right? So we have to, let's talk about the difference.
Take the chaff from the corn.
Exactly. We got to talk about the difference. And I think the difference is it has to do with acceptance of self. And when I accept myself, the good parts and the parts that are struggling, the parts that are hurting, the parts that we would call the darker side of us, which could be our sadness, our hurts, our fears,
Our wounds.
our wounds, as they all add up to, and which begin in childhood. Then if I learn how to not be afraid of those and really love myself and accept myself, I won't be selfish. I will have boundaries, but allow you boundaries and allow you to be the imperfect person that you are too.
Yeah, I think that's the key about imperfection. You know, the book, The Good Enough Mother. Mm-hmm. It's like you can only give a certain amount in the world, and it's
Right.
interactive, you know what I mean, in that way. The ability to hold a mirror up to oneself and be
Yes.
honest with oneself, whether you share it with your partner or anybody else in the world, it has to start with an honest look at the wounds, the sadness, the shortcomings,
Yes.
the vengeful feelings, the loving feelings. It's the range of everything. And I think there are many people that simply refuse to hold that mirror up. You know, I use the word, their internal judge has a very heavy hammer.
Yes.
And I think that stops you from, that self-love. It's that judgment in the back of your head that's always being critical. It's almost like a parent that you've taken with you, that finger is always pointing. And to me, it's suffocating. It's deadly.
Very good point, and I talk to my clients about this all the time. I always say, let's be analytical, not critical. And here is the difference, because we all make mistakes. We all have fears. We all get hurt. We all cry. We all yell. However, like Michael said, if you have that critical parent going, you're bad, you're shameful, you should feel guilty, which most of us do, then we can't learn. We trap ourselves in a prison. If we go, you know what, like Michael said, hold the mirror up. You know, I really did hurt my partner's feelings, or I really was afraid and I didn't behave the way I should. I'd like to behave better. That's analytical. That's taking the information, no right, wrong. It's just learning. And learning is how we learn anything. We look at the information, what isn't working, and then we move toward doing it differently. So number 4 is communication, which I think is one of the cornerstones of a good couple's relationship. Again, no one teaches us how to do this effectively. This is something we should be learning in high school so we can practice it and be effective in our communication with our partner. Yes.
I would go back to what you started with about imprinting. We
Yes.
learn how to communicate from the familial situation that we came from. Screamers, silence,
Right.
facial expressions, all kinds of variations. I think we learned by watching, by looking, by taking it in and thinking, what seems to work and what doesn't. I had a woman, I worked in geriatrics and gerontology, and every time we talked about something that she didn't want to talk about, she started to sing. So I would ask her, you're thinking about plots and gravestones. Well, and she would go into a song, and I'd say, hello, hello. She had to finish the song, and then we could chat again. And then if I again asked something that was sensitive, boom, she was in another song.
Oh, interesting.
And I thought, what a hoot. But that's,
that was her.
That was her.
Maybe protecting herself there.
Clearly, in a way that's almost hard to get into because
Yes.
you're so mesmerized by the song and the audacity of it that you're thinking, what? People are more subtle, but they
course.
certainly can avoid
Yes, communication.
communication. They can sort of skew it. The other piece, by the way, is, and to me, this is always a good rule of thumb. If someone says one thing and their person tells you something else, I almost always go with the person and not what the words are. You control what comes out of your mouth, but you
Right.
can't control that look, your eyes, your eyebrow, your whatever it is. I think your person will tell you part of communication. You have to really look at that person.
That's a good point because, yes, that's very true. But communication is a big subject. So we'll try to get to some of the points here. Communication involves a speaker and not another speaker. Listener. One person speaks, one person listens. We talked about this before. So when we have something that we're upset about that we want to express to our partner, we have to sometimes set up a place where you can tell your partner, and I recommend this with couples, there's something I want to talk to you about, Michael. Do you have the time to listen? Right. And if he says, yes, I can listen right now. Listening does not mean he just gives me an editorial on what I just told him. He is actually listening. So it involves a speaker and a listener, not two speakers, which usually gets into fights. So we call this exercise reflective listening, where one person speaks and one person repeats back what the person is saying. So that is very, very important to learn how to do, but very difficult to do.
Are we also talking about resolving conflicts?
And resolving conflicts, you can't resolve conflicts unless you listen and understand what both people are talking about.
Well, exactly. And that is harder to do than it looks.
It's so hard to do, as we can tell in relationships. Everybody wants to be right. So communication is hard, and we do have an exercise that we will be providing on screen so you can see how to do it. And maybe Michael and I have a little time to just give an example. Michael, so it really hurt my feelings when you didn't give me a present for my birthday. I was really expecting that. I know we went out to dinner, but I wanted a present.
So let me see if I hear this right, which is I try to give you what I thought you would like,
yes,
taking you to dinner, but at the same time, you really wanted something else also. Just for whatever reasons, that's what you bring to this. That would be special to you. And for me, I have to really understand that. I have to remember that the next time.
Yes, I would really like something specially from you to me that shows me you love me.
You know, I would love to do that. What I always fall into the trap of is like I'm judging. Will she like it? Will it be the right thing? So I have to be able to put that aside and just sort of remember how important this is to you.
You know, thank you for telling me that. I just thought you knew me. We would have been married for so you would know what to buy me. But I understand now it puts you in a spot too, huh?
Yeah. You know, I don't want to be, quote, wrong or ruin the moment by giving you something. You open it up and you go, oh, this is great.
Okay. Well, we can resolve that by maybe coming up with an idea of how we can make that work.
I would love to do that.
Oh, okay. So that was like the perfect way to communicate, but anyway, we were trying to make a point. He didn't fight me. He didn't say, well, I took you out to dinner. Why aren't you grateful? How dare you? And you know how much money I spend on taking you. Okay, it could have happened that way. But I also learned something by listening back to what he was saying, that he was worried that maybe he would hurt my feelings or I wouldn't like it. And that made him hesitant. So he thought taking me out to dinner was, so we communicated. I spoke. He listened. I listened. I learned something, and we resolved a conflict. I wish it was that easy, but that was our example. This was our first podcast. I'm so excited to be here with Dr. Michael Berlin talking about relationships. And please tune in next week. We're going to go from number 6 to number 10 on the 10 keys to successful relationships.